Hey everybody, it's Ryan from Pie Records, and I'm happy to be back with Sean Eddy, guitar player extraordinaire. This guy does it all. He plays country, he plays surf, plays rock, pop. He does these awesome loops when he plays by himself. Um, Welcome back, Sean.
Yeah, we're glad to be back.
We're gonna do a top five today,
Let's do
and
it.
it's rare that I get somebody on the channel that wants to talk about this. So I'm going to take complete advantage of you, Eddy, Sean Eddy, Mr. Eddy. Your top five hair metal bands from the 80s.
Okay, so which of course we use the term hair metal because I don't know that it's necessarily appropriate because I think it's more hard rock, but it's fun to call them that. That's what people know them by. This could be a tough one, um, because there's about maybe four that I rotate around being my favorite. So I think my I think my all-time favorite band from the 80s, I'm going to have to say Night Ranger. I know I'm wearing the Night Ranger shirt. It was a really big toss-up between Night Ranger and Winger. But I love Night Ranger. And one of the things that drew me to them early on was the fact that they had a singing drummer. And I don't know. I always thought that was cool because growing up, I was a singing drummer. And at one point, I had a band where I was fronting the band from the drums singing. And so I really like that. I really like their music. It's very melodic and it's just good songwriting, good playing. I've seen them live countless times and I've thoroughly enjoyed myself every time. They sound so great. Um, I saw them. It was just before I saw him down in Houston before the pandemic, and I saw him again in Fort Worth and like recent, and they just sound better and better every time I hear them. And I just think that they're a fantastic group of guys. Um, so if I was to move down the list, I would say number two. I guess I probably should have gone in the opposite order, but we're already on it. I'd say my number two would be Winger. Uh, that's a really tough one for me to decide between the two. I think Kip Winger and Reb Beach has been like one of my all time favorite guitar players. I love him in White Snake. I love him in Winger. He's got so much personality, and he's not very rigid. He's like when you watch him play, just he flows well. He looks like he's having a good time. He just loves to rock out. He makes the best faces during his solos. Uh, I always, every time I go to see Winger, which I go every time they are in town, I make sure that I go and see them. And I always make sure that I get there early and I sit on the stage right because I know that Red Beach is going to be on the right. So I always go and stand right in front of them. And unfortunately, I have not had the pleasure of this yet, but every single time that they play, um, Kip usually tries to take an audience member to come up and play bass for a song. It's always the same song, and I have gone nuts every time trying to get them to pick me. And uh, the last time I went, he was like, "I really want to pick this guy." He pointed at me, and there was a guy like two people over from me that was also going nuts. He goes, "But I really want to pick this guy too." And so he did an eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and I lost.
Ah,
So I don't know. Next time I may come up with a sign, or I don't know what I'm gonna do. But one of these days, I'm gonna get up and play bass for a Winger, and that will. I think my music career will be pretty much complete at that point.
I want to ask you a question about Winger.
Sure.
A lot of people don't know that he was in the Alice Cooper band. Is that where you followed him from, or was it the Winger band originally?
No, it was the Winger band originally. I didn't learn about that until later. I'm trying to think of where I really started liking them. Obviously, I really like the riff on the song 17. Um,
Yeah, that's a good one.
and I, I'm, you know, I wish I could say I knew. I wish I could say I knew where it came from. My early, getting into this style of music, I started with Metallica and worked my way from there, and went a bunch of different directions. You know, Night Ranger I think's a little ways from Metallica, but a friend of mine when I was younger kind of introduced me to them, and I got hooked on them, and then later discovered Winger. Moving down the list, I don't know if I'd classify this as hair metal per se, but Queensryche. I absolutely love Queensryche. They um, obviously they're no, and none of these bands are really what I would call like glam rock or anything like that. I think they're just
Yeah.
hard rock. Queensryche, I think you could classify as metal. I think some people might debate that, but I think they fit pretty closely in that category. Um,
I think
I
they have better songs than Silent Lucidity. I think that's a kind of an oddball in their repertoire.
Yeah. So the last time I saw them play was the first time I heard them not do that song. I saw them a couple months ago, or like maybe a month ago. They opened up for Judas Priest, who was also amazing.
Wow.
And they did a lot of deep cuts, and it was great. It was probably the best I've ever heard them. And I may not be in the majority of Queensryche fans in saying this, but I'm a huge Todd Latore fan. I think he has been such a great addition to that band, and he's got great energy, and he's got an amazing voice, and he just seems like a stand-up guy. And I thoroughly love. I think that he does a very good job of. He says it best. He's not trying to replicate um, what Jeff did. It's more of a tribute to what he does is more of a tribute, but it sounds. I mean, he sounds so good and he sounds so close. Like if you were close your eyes and listen live, and you didn't know it was him singing. I mean, he can fool you, and I think that he's a very good fit, and their new music is good. And I kind of started losing interest with some of the last couple albums with Jeff. I think they kind of went off on in directions that just weren't that interesting. I don't know. I don't know if you feel the same way or not, but I just
I
was
I, I hadn't followed them. I think the last album I had was Operation Mind Prime. Then I got more into I think punk rock kind of sank in and like right around
okay.
that.
Yeah, some of their last stuff before before Jeff left, I don't know. It just got a little. It just wasn't the Queensryche that I fell in love with, and so when Todd came on, it seems like they went back to their roots. They went back to being a hard hitting, rock band, and they have so much energy at their shows, and they sound great. You always think these bands are years and years later, not going to sound as good as they did. But I would be willing to bet that if you took someone that saw them back in the '80s and saw them now, they would be impressed. And so let's see, my last two. This is going to be a tough one. Um, I'd probably from there have to go to White Snake, and once again, being a Red Beach fan, I think he's the longest. I mean, obviously besides David, but Red Beach is I believe he's the longest standing member in the band. Uh, and I love David Coverdale. Like he's just a funny guy. You know, I think they bring a lot of energy. I've not been able to see them live yet, and I'm hoping I get to on this final tour. I don't know if they're going to make it to the U.S. or not. I haven't looked, but I think he's doing a final tour right now.
The
So
the first time I heard Whitesnake was not Here I Go Again. It was Still of the Night.
yeah,
And I was like, who is this new band? And like they're so heavy. It was such a powerful riff. But the majority of the people in that video, like Rudy Sarzo, was not on the record. like
Mhm.
the credits on the record look different than the people in the video.
Yeah.
But I was so like, I was like, who the hell is this? So they really came out with all guns blazing on that album.
They're when you listen to their really early stuff, especially they've got a what's the name of there's a live one of their really early live albums. They've got such a heavy blues influence, and I'm a blues guy. Like I love blues music, and so I've just always enjoyed I've just always enjoyed that blues influence that they've had. Um, I don't know. I think that they're a great band. They're always fun to listen to. I don't think they have a single bad album. Um, moving along from there, Extreme. I love Extreme,
Yeah.
and uh, I hate that I have to put these bands in any sort of order, but um,
Are you
there
are you a fan of Nuno because of Flight of the Bumblebee?
no, it's funny. I first learned about them from the Bill and Ted movie,
Yeah.
and so that song, I mean that just a ripping guitar solo, and I was like, "What is this?" I was just learning how to play guitar, and watching Bill and Ted, and I was like, "That is an insane guitar solo," and so I wanted to know who it was, and of course, back then the internet wasn't really. It was kind of when I was this kind of dates me a little bit. The internet was kind of just becoming popular when I was in high school and learning how to play guitar. So I did have some access to tabs, although we would still, you couldn't find them quite as easy online, and they didn't have like YouTube and video instruction and stuff. So I'd go to a music store and buy a tab book.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. And of course, I was learning tabs and learning how to play, and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Like I couldn't tell you what notes I was playing. I just looked for a number on a fretboard, and I'm just going to hammer this over and over until I make it sound like I want it to. And then finally I wised up and started learning a bit about music theory and get actually getting a deeper understanding. But uh, yeah, that song. Which it doesn't really, when you listen to the words, obviously doesn't really have much substance. It's just a song with a whole lot of guitar playing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I also like that, a three-piece band, how much, because I've watched a lot of their live videos and listen, they sound phenomenal. And Nuno is just insane. I don't know if you've seen it, but there is a video with him doing the Game of Thrones theme.
No.
So it's him and there's a bunch of other guitar players. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other guitar players. Some some famous, some not. And one of the guys, Nuno, obviously does a really good solo on it, but they just do this long like swapping solos thing for like 10 minutes or something like that. And one guy that's unexpected there is Brad Paisley,
Oh.
and he just shreds. I mean, uh, Brad Paisley just comes out of left field and just does this ripping, shredding solo. Then I'm like, you're like, why is this guy not playing metal? Yeah, and so that was pretty cool. Yeah, I'm also a Brad Paisley fan. I've seen him. I remember seeing him live years before he became uh, really famous, and so that was a cool video. But yeah, Nuno's got like this like gold plated guitar, some crazy like
Yeah.
this like insane looking thing that like I'd be afraid to even touch. And then Brad comes in with a Telecaster and just shreds. So yeah, if you get an opportunity, look that up. There's some pretty good guitar players on there, and it's not a disappointment. So
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sean. And stick around for his interview and his live performance on the channel. Have a great day, Sean.
thanks, you too.